The woman stood at the edge of the cottonwood trees, half shadow, half light, as if the land itself hadn't yet decided whether to claim her or let her go. The late afternoon sun poured gold across the plains, catching on dust motes and tall grass, but it stopped short of her face. That was intentional. She'd learned where to stand so people didn't look too closely. Learned how to make herself small without bending her spine. Learned how to exist without inviting notice. The rancher noticed anyway. He hadn't meant to. Ethan Cole had spent most of his life training his eyes for cattle, movement in tall grass, the flick of an ear, the dark curve of a back where there shouldn't be one. Years alone had sharpened his instincts until they were almost painful. So when something didn't belong, his body reacted before his thoughts caught up. He reined in his horse slowly. The woman didn't move. She wore a faded buckskin dress, mended so many times the seams looked like scars. Her hair, thick and black, was braided down her back, streaked with dust and sunlight. Her hands were empty, held loosely at her sides, palms visible. Not a threat, never meant to be. Ethan dismounted, boots crunching softly on dry earth. He didn't reach for the rifle slung over his shoulder. He'd learned long ago that fear spoke louder than weapons. "You lost?" he asked, voice low, steady. The woman lifted her chin just enough for him to see her eyes. Dark, tired, watchful in the way of someone who had learned that hope was a dangerous thing. "No," she said. Her English was careful, deliberate, as if each word cost something. "I am where I am." That gave him pause. People who were lost usually said so. People who weren't didn't wander onto another man's land without reason. "You're on my ranch," Ethan said gently. "That makes it my business to ask why." Her fingers curled once, then relaxed. She looked past him, toward the open fields, the low barn in the distance, the house sitting quiet against the horizon. "A place. A fixed place. I was told," she said slowly, "that you sometimes hire help. That you do not ask many questions." Ethan studied her then. Not the clothes, not the dust, but the way she stood. Upright, wounded but unbroken, like someone who had been pushed aside too many times and learned to step out of the way before the push came. "Who told you that?" he asked. She hesitated. "Someone who did not keep me." That answer carried more weight than it should have. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "You have a name." She was quiet for so long he thought she might refuse. Then, softly, "Ayanna." He nodded. "I'm Ethan." She didn't offer her hand. He didn't expect her to. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dry grass and cattle and the faint trace of rain somewhere far off. Ayanna hugged her shawl tighter around her shoulders, though the day was still warm. "You're Apache," Ethan said, not as an accusation. As an observation. "Yes. You alone." Her jaw tightened. Just a flicker. But he saw it. "I have always been alone," she said. That was the first lie. Not because she spoke it poorly, but because no one learned that kind of loneliness without once belonging somewhere. Ethan leaned against his horse's flank, casual on the outside, careful on the inside. He'd seen fear before, anger, desperation, but this was something quieter. A resignation that sat deep in the bones. "What kind of work are you looking for?" he asked. "Any," she replied immediately. Too immediately. "I cook. I clean. I mend. I can work fields. I can keep quiet." The last part landed wrong. He straightened slightly. "Why would I need you to keep quiet?" Her eyes dropped to the ground. "Because people do not like stories," she said. "And I have one." Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Not pity. Something heavier. Recognition. Maybe. He'd buried his own story so deep he almost forgot it was there. His father's ranch lost to debt, his mother's grave before he was grown, the years of silence afterward. He knew what it was to be shaped by things you didn't choose. "You don't owe me silence," he said. "Just honesty." She let out a small, humorless breath. "Honesty is why I am here." He waited. "I was promised," Ayanna began, voice steady but thin as stretched hide, "that I would be a wife." There it was. Ethan said nothing. "In our way," she continued, "a woman is chosen for her strength, her skill, her spirit. I have all of these. But I am difficult." He almost smiled. "Almost. Difficult how?" "I ask questions," she said. "I do not lower my eyes quickly. I speak when I see wrong." A pause. "And my mother died young," she added quietly. My father too. Without them, I am no one's responsibility. Ethan felt the words settle between them like dust after a fall. So you were promised, he said slowly, and then. Then he chose another, she replied. No bitterness, just fact, younger, softer, easier. The silence stretched. I was told, Ayanna went on, that it was nothing personal. That I would understand, that another man would choose me. Her mouth tightened. No one did. Ethan's jaw clenched, though he didn't yet know why. I went to another family, she said. Then another. I worked. I helped. I waited. She finally looked at him then. Really looked, eyes bright with something dangerously close to breaking. And every time, she said, I was useful. But never wanted. The wind sighed through the grass. I am nobody's choice, she finished. The words didn't tremble. They didn't crack. They were worse than that. Settled. Accepted. Like a truth she'd carved into herself so deeply it no longer bled. Ethan felt something hot and sharp rise in his chest. He'd known women like that growing up. Women who cooked and cleaned and held families together while men decided their worth. He'd watched his mother disappear piece by piece under that kind of quiet dismissal. He stepped closer without thinking. Ayanna, he said. She stiffened, ready for dismissal. Ready for the polite refusal. Ready to be thanked and turned away. I didn't ask you here because I need a servant, Ethan said. And I sure as hell didn't ask you here to be someone's leftover. Her breath caught. I asked what work you want, he continued, voice firm now, because work is honest. But worth, that's not something people get to decide for you. Her eyes searched his face, suspicious. Wounded animals didn't trust open hands. You do not know me, she said. I know enough, he replied. You walked miles to stand on land that doesn't belong to you, to ask a man you've never met for a chance. That takes more courage than most folks I know. She swallowed hard. I will not stay where I am tolerated, she said. If that is all you offer, say it now. Ethan didn't hesitate. I don't tolerate people, he said. I choose them. The words surprised even him. They hung there, heavy, undeniable. Ayanna stared at him, something breaking loose behind her eyes. Why? She whispered. Ethan thought of the empty house. The quiet evenings. The meals eaten alone. The years he'd convinced himself solitude was strength. Because, he said simply, I know what it feels like to be passed over. Her shoulders shook once. She turned away quickly, ashamed of the reaction, but he'd already seen it, the crack in the armor. I can pay you, Ethan said. Fair wages. A room of your own. No promises beyond that. She nodded slowly. And when someone better comes. He met her gaze. Then I'll let you decide, he said. Not them. Not me. For the first time since she'd stepped out of the trees. Ayanna exhaled fully. I will work hard, she said. I will not shame you. Ethan almost laughed, though his eyes burned. You don't owe me that either, he said. Just stay. She hesitated, then nodded. As they walked toward the ranch together, the sun dipping low behind them, neither of them realized it yet, but something ancient had shifted. A story long paused had begun moving again. Not because she had finally been chosen, but because, for the first time in her life, someone had answered her truth with one of his own. And neither of them would ever be the same. Morning came softly to the ranch, like it was afraid of waking something fragile. Ayanna woke before the sun. She always did. Her eyes opened instantly, body already alert, breath shallow until she remembered where she was. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, wooden beams instead of canvas or open sky. No smoke-stained lodge poles. No borrowed corners. A room. Her room. She sat up slowly on the narrow bed, feet touching the floor without a sound. Old habits didn't leave easily. In places where she had once stayed, noise brought attention. Attention brought questions. Questions brought endings. She half expected someone to be standing in the doorway, arms crossed, regret already forming on their face. No one was there. The ranch was quiet, not the tense quiet of people pretending peace, but the honest stillness of land waking up. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed. Cattle shifted in the distance. Wind moved through grass like a long breath. Ayanna wrapped her shawl around herself and stood. The room was simple. Washed wood walls, a small window, a chair, a basin with clean water. Nothing extravagant, everything intentional. As if the man who owned this place had considered what someone might need rather than what they deserved. That alone unsettled her. She braided her hair quickly, hands steady, then paused when she caught her reflection in the small mirror above the basin. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Not because she looked different. Because she looked present. She pushed the thought away and stepped outside. The air was cool, dawn just beginning to lift the dark. Ethan was already up, moving near the barn, sleeves rolled, hands busy with a rhythm born of years. He didn't look surprised to see her. Didn't comment on the hour. Morning, he said simply. Morning, she replied. No questions, no expectations voiced aloud. She waited, unsure. In other places, she would have already been told what to do. Or worse, left standing until someone noticed her usefulness. Ethan nodded toward the barn. If you're willing, there's feed to be laid out. I can show you. I know how, she said, then softened it. But show me how you do it. That earned a brief, thoughtful look. Not offended, curious. They worked side by side as the sun rose, dust clinging to boots and hems. He showed her the quirks of the land, where the boards warped in the heat, which cattle kicked when startled, how to tell when a horse was nervous before it showed in its eyes. Ayanna listened carefully, not just to the words, but to what he didn't say. He never hovered, never corrected her sharply. When she did something differently than he would have, he watched first, evaluated, then nodded if it worked. That was new. By mid-morning, her hands ached pleasantly. Honest work, the kind that didn't feel like proving. They ate in silence on the porch. Simple bread, beans, water. She noticed he waited until she took the first bite. A test? No, a courtesy. She studied him over the rim of her cup. He was quieter than most men she'd known. Not guarded exactly, just contained. Like someone who had learned that words didn't always make things better. Why do you live alone? She asked, suddenly. Ethan paused, cup halfway to his mouth. She stiffened immediately. You do not have to. It's fair, he said, setting the cup down. I asked you questions yesterday. She nodded, bracing herself. People didn't like being asked things they hadn't rehearsed answers for. My father built this place, Ethan began. I grew up here, thought I'd leave once, didn't. He stared out over the fields, eyes narrowing slightly, not at the land, but at memory. My wife died 5 winters ago. Ayanna's breath caught. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He nodded once. She was kind, stronger than people gave her credit for. Silence settled again, heavier this time. No children? Ayanna asked. Ethan shook his head. No. The word echoed. No. She understood that sound. They finished eating without another word. By afternoon, dust clouds rose along the road leading to the ranch. Ayanna saw it first. Her body reacted before her mind caught up. Spine straightening, shoulders tightening, eyes scanning escape routes she no longer needed. Ethan noticed instantly. Riders, he said. Neighbors. Her stomach sank. In every place she had stayed, the arrival of others changed things. Smiles tightened. Voices lowered. Decisions were made without her present. 3 men rode up, reins loose, expressions casual but eyes sharp. They glanced at Ayanna openly, not unkindly, but not neutrally either. Didn't know you had company, one of them said, a man with a sun-cracked face and a voice shaped by judgment. She works here, Ethan replied calmly. The word works landed like a shield. One man raised an eyebrow. Apache. Yes. Ayanna felt the weight of the pause. She's quiet, Ethan added. Does her job. That's so. Another man muttered. Thought your place was different. Ethan's gaze hardened just a fraction. It is. The conversation shifted, but the damage lingered. When the men left, dust settling slowly behind them, Ayanna stood frozen, heart hammering. That is how it begins, she said softly. Ethan turned to her. How what begins? The questions, she replied. Then the warnings. Then the offers to help you get rid of the problem. She met his eyes. I am the problem. Ethan shook his head. No. Fear is. She didn't argue. She'd learned better. That night, as she lay in her bed, sleep refused to come. Every sound outside set her nerves alight. She waited for the knock. The conversation. The gentle suggestion that it wasn't working out. Instead, there was nothing. The next day passed the same way. Work, quiet meals, no pressure, no withdrawal. By the third day, her guard began to fail her. She laughed once, an involuntary sound, when Ethan nearly lost a bucket to a stubborn mule. The sound startled them both. She covered her mouth, eyes wide, waiting for disapproval. Ethan just stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't wide, or practiced. It looked like something that hadn't been used much. "That sound suits you," he said. Her throat tightened. "I did not mean." "It's fine," he said. "You don't have to disappear here." The words lodged deep. That evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, they sat on the porch again. Ayanna worked on mending a torn saddle strap, fingers sure. "You said once," Ethan said carefully, "that you were nobody's choice." Her hands stilled. "Yes." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Do you believe that?" She considered the question honestly. "I believe it has been proven," she said. Ethan nodded. "Then let me prove something else." She looked up. "Staying," he said. "Every day you stay, when you could leave, that is a choice too." Her chest ached. "I do not know how long I can stay," she admitted. "Peace does not usually last for me." Ethan looked at her then. Not as an employer. Not as a rescuer. As a man choosing truth. "Then we'll take it one day at a time," he said. "No promises bigger than that." Ayanna lowered her gaze, hands trembling slightly as she resumed her work. One day at a time. For the first time in her life, that didn't sound like survival. It sounded like possibility. Winter did not arrive all at once. It crept in the way doubt does, quietly, persistently, settling into corners before anyone thought to fight it. One morning the frost lingered longer than usual on the cabin steps. Another day the creek's song thinned beneath a skin of ice. By the end of the week, snow dusted the pines like ash, and the mountain exhaled a cold that felt deliberate. Matilda noticed before Elias said a word. She stood at the window just after dawn, wrapped in her shawl, watching the sky pale from iron gray to a brittle blue. Her breath fogged the glass. Somewhere deep in the forest, something cracked, wood contracting under cold. "It's early," she said. Elias, lacing his boots, nodded. "This year wants to be hard." She turned to him. "Are we ready?" He paused, considering the question the way he considered all things, carefully, honestly. "We'll be ready enough." That answer should have worried her. Instead, it steadied her. They had settled into a rhythm over the past weeks, one born not of comfort, but of necessity. There was no romance in it yet, no grand gestures. Just shared labor and unspoken respect. Matilda learned the mountain's language quickly. She learned how snow changed texture before a storm, how Elias listened to the wind like it was speaking directly to him. She learned which tasks he preferred to do alone and which he silently welcomed help with. Elias learned her silences had shape. That she grew quiet not when she was hurt, but when she was remembering. He learned she slept lightly, waking at the smallest unfamiliar sound. He learned she never wasted food, never complained of cold, never asked for more than she'd been offered. They were two people who had learned survival separately, now learning it together. The first real fracture came when the mountain forced them back into town. Supplies were running low faster than expected. The cold had slowed trapping, and flour bins were thinning dangerously. Elias debated going alone, but winter roads were treacherous, and he knew better than to tempt fate. "Silver Creek," he said one morning, tightening the cinch on the horse. "Just for an hour." Matilda's shoulders tensed. She masked it quickly. "I'll come." He studied her face. "You don't have to." "I know," she replied. "But I won't hide." That earned a flicker of something like pride in his eyes. Silver Creek looked different under snow, smaller, meaner somehow. Buildings hunched low, smoke rising like whispers that didn't want to be overheard. People noticed them immediately. Matilda felt it like a physical weight. The stares, the nudges, the half-smiles that weren't kind. She kept her gaze forward, jaw set, hands steady. Inside the mercantile, the air was thick with judgment. "Well, I'll be damned," someone muttered. He actually married her. Married. The word landed strangely. They weren't. Not yet, but the assumption still warmed something fragile inside her. Old Man Carter leaned over the counter. "Boone, didn't think you'd bring her down here." Elias's voice was even. "She needed supplies too." Carter's eyes slid to Matilda, lingering too long. Reckon the mountain suits her better than town folk. The insult was wrapped carefully, but it was still sharp. Matilda opened her mouth. Elias spoke first. Reckon manners suit a man better than opinions. A ripple of uneasy laughter followed. Another man, young, smug, warm from whiskey, leaned back against a shelf. Heard they sent her as a joke. Guess you got what you paid for. Something in Matilda's chest cracked open. She felt the familiar burn, the instinct to shrink, to disappear, to become less so others could feel like more. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Before she could retreat into herself, Elias moved. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He stepped between her and the voice. You ever notice, he said quietly, how men who laugh loudest usually have the least to say? The young man scoffed. Just speak in truth. Elias turned fully now, his presence filling the space. Truth's not something you stumble into by accident. Silence followed. Thick, uncomfortable. Elias gathered their supplies and paid without another word. Outside, the cold felt cleaner. They rode back in silence. Not the companionable kind this time, but the kind heavy with things unsaid. At the cabin, Matilda dismounted stiffly and began unloading supplies with unnecessary force. A sack of flour hit the table harder than needed. Matilda, Elias said gently. She didn't look at him. I can work. That's not what I... Then what? Her voice cracked. She turned, eyes bright, jaw trembling. What did you expect me to feel in there? Elias struggled. He had fought storms and animals and hunger, but this was different. This required precision. I expected them to be small, he said. I didn't expect them to hurt you. She laughed once, sharp and bitter. They always do. He stepped closer. Not touching, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. Not here. Her breath hitched. You can't stop the world, Elias. No, he said, but I can draw a line. The wind rattled the shutters, as if the mountain itself were listening. That night, the storm came. Not gently, not gradually. It slammed into the cabin like a thing with intent. Wind screaming, snow battering the walls, the roof groaning under sudden weight. Elias was on his feet instantly, reinforcing shutters, checking beams. Stay by the fire, he ordered. Matilda obeyed, until she didn't. A loud crack split the air. One of the main support beams shifted. Elias swore, rushing to brace it. Before he could act alone, Matilda was there, hands planted, shoulder braced, muscles straining. Don't, he shouted. I won't leave you. She shot back. They held the beam together as the storm raged, bodies pressed close, breath mingling. The moment was raw, unfiltered, fear and trust colliding. When the storm finally eased, they sagged back, adrenaline draining. They sat by the fire afterward, wrapped in blankets, shaken but unbroken. You didn't hesitate, Elias said quietly. She stared into the flames. Neither did you. Something shifted then. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Equality forged under pressure. Days later, sickness came. It took Matilda fast, a fever burning through her strength, leaving her pale and shaking. Elias recognized it too late. He stayed at her bedside, feeding her broth, cooling her skin, whispering reassurance she may not have heard. She drifted in and out, murmuring fragments, apologies, half-remembered names, words like sorry and try harder that cut deeper than any insult. Stop apologizing, he whispered fiercely. You've done nothing wrong. When the fever broke at last, Elias collapsed into the chair, exhaustion overtaking him. Matilda woke hours later to find him asleep, head bowed, one hand still gripping hers like an anchor. She studied him in the lamplight, the strength, the quiet vulnerability. They sent me as a joke, she whispered. And you stayed. Her fingers tightened around his. Outside, the mountain stood silent and vast. The world had tried to define them. Up here, they were becoming something else entirely. Winter deepened its hold on the mountain. The snow no longer fell in gentle sheets. It came down in determined waves, piling against the cabin walls, reshaping the world into something smaller and more intense. The trail disappeared entirely. Silver Creek might as well have been another country. They were alone now in the truest sense. Not isolated. Together. Matilda recovered slowly. The fever left her weaker than she cared to admit, her strength returning in uneven steps. Elias watched her with quiet vigilance, never hovering, never turning away. He adjusted tasks without comment, took on more without complaint. It unsettled her, not because he was kind, but because he never made that kindness feel like charity. On the morning she insisted on resuming her full share of work, Elias said nothing. He simply handed her a smaller bundle of kindling than usual. "I can carry more," she said. "I know," he replied. "Today, you don't need to." She studied him, searching for pity. Found none. That afternoon, while the wind carved shapes in the snow outside, Matilda worked at the table, mending a tear in one of Elias's shirts. Her stitches were neat, precise. She had learned long ago that usefulness was a kind of armor. Elias watched from the workbench, pretending not to notice the way her brow furrowed when she concentrated, or how the firelight softened the sharp edges people had once used to describe her. "Why do you hate mirrors?" he asked suddenly. The needle paused. She didn't look up. "I don't hate them. You avoid them." A long breath. "They tell stories other people already decided." He turned fully toward her. "And what story do you see?" She threaded the needle again. "One where I am always slightly wrong. Not enough of the right thing. Too much of something else." "That's not a story," he said. "That's theft." Her hand stilled. "Someone stole the truth from you," he continued, "and convinced you it never existed." She laughed softly, without humor. "You speak like a man who's never been judged by his face." He smiled faintly. "No, just by my silence." That landed differently. They returned to their tasks, but the air between them had changed, charged, stretched thin. That night, the wind howled again, but the storm stayed distant. Elias sat near the fire, sharpening a blade. Matilda read by lamplight, her feet tucked beneath her on the bench. She yawned, eyes drooping. "You should rest," Elias said. "So should you." "I will." Neither moved. Finally, she stood, crossing the room to return the book to the shelf. As she passed him, her sleeve brushed his arm. The contact was accidental. The reaction was not. Elias froze, breath catching so sharply it startled them both. Matilda stopped mid-step, pulse racing. She began. "It's all right," he said quickly, too quickly. Silence swallowed the words. She turned to face him. They were close now, too close for pretending. "I don't frighten you," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "No," he replied. "You don't." Something fragile steadied in her chest. "Then why do you pull away?" Elias stood, abruptly increasing the distance. He dragged a hand through his hair, frustrated, not with her, but with himself. "Because wanting you doesn't feel safe," he admitted. Her breath hitched. "Safe. For you," he clarified. "For me, I don't want to take something you haven't freely offered." She stepped closer again, carefully, like approaching a skittish animal. "What if I want to offer it?" His jaw tightened. "You deserve time, choice, not pressure born of snow and isolation." Her voice trembled. "Do you think I don't know the difference?" That stopped him. She met his gaze fully now. No apology, no retreat. "Just truth. I've been unwanted," she said. "I've been mocked, dismissed, sent away like an inconvenience. Do not mistake my caution for ignorance." He swallowed hard. "I am not confused," she continued. "I am afraid, but I am not blind." Elias closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself. When he opened them, his voice was rough. "If I touch you, I don't know how to stop." Her heart pounded. "Then don't touch me yet." That surprised him. She smiled faintly. "Stay. That's enough." So he did. They sat by the fire again, closer than before but not touching, every inch between them alive with possibility. It was harder than distance had ever been. Later that night, Matilda lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her room felt different now, less like refuge, more like waiting. She rose quietly, wrapped herself in a shawl, and stepped into the main room. Elias was awake, staring into the embers. "You too?" he asked softly. She nodded. "The quiet is loud tonight." He shifted, making space on the bench beside him, an invitation without demand. She sat. For a long while, they simply breathed. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you answer the advertisement?" He considered. "Because I was tired of being known only by rumor." She nodded. "Me too." She hesitated, Then added, "They told me you wouldn't care what I looked like. That you were desperate." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Are you disappointed?" She turned fully toward him. "No. Are you?" He met her eyes. "Never." Her hand trembled as she placed it on the bench between them. Not touching him. Just close enough to ask. He answered by placing his hand beside hers. Still not touching. The fire popped, sending sparks upward. "Elias," she said softly, "if you don't want me, say it." He looked at her then like a man standing at the edge of something holy and terrifying. "I want you so badly it frightens me." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "Good. That finally did it." He reached out. Slow, deliberate, and covered her hand with his. The contact was simple. It felt like a vow. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The world narrowed to that point of connection, the firelight, the quiet trust humming between them. Outside, the mountain held its breath. They did not kiss. They did not need to. What passed between them that night was stronger than impulse. It was choice, made fully awake. When Matilda finally stood to return to her room, Elias let her go without protest. At the door, she paused. "Elias, yes, thank you for waiting." His voice was steady. "Thank you for choosing." She slept deeply that night. So did he. And the mountain, heavy with snow and silence, seemed to settle more comfortably around the cabin, as if acknowledging that something true had been named at last. Not love, not yet, but the promise of it.